Welcome to Thriving Rockstar with Alex Rakin. Today's guest is Rusty Osborne. How are you, Rusty?
Doing fantastic. How are you?
Awesome. Awesome. So I found Rusty on Instagram, of all places, and I just noticed he was doing some really cool stuff. And he was into coaching musicians for health, which is what I do, and what I talk about. So it's definitely something we had to discuss.
hmm
So here we are. So what are you up to right now? Like what have you been doing recently? I know you have your band Redneck Rodeo.
Yeah.
You guys been touring or what?
We've been doing a lot of regional stuff, so it's been like a weekends out over and over.
Hmm.
So we were just up in Lancaster, so it was like without too much traffic, it's about 2 hours away. And then we were local the night before, the weekend before, we were down in El Cajon, which is another 2 hours away, and doing the Vegas thing and out in Arizona and kind of. Luckily, it's all been weekends out and back, so it's nothing too crazy.
Cool,
But
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
so.
So how did you take me back to like, the early days of your own musicianship and how you got started and what came first? Was it the health? Was it the music?
It's definitely the music.
Mm.
So, because I was a kid, I remember one day I was just crawling around in my dad's underneath my parents' bed because I was a stupid kid just trying to find stuff, and I found his guitar case under there. I'm like, Dad, what the heck's this thing? And so
Uh,
he pulled it out, and he had like a Disney songbook, and he showed me a couple chords, and I sat there all night trying to figure out how to play a C. 'Cause I was like, what the heck is wrong with this thing? And the next day he took me to Sam Ash. We bought a guitar and an amp, and just started playing. You
awesome.
know,
How old were you?
so I was 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um, so that was good. And then they were really supportive of getting me going, and I was excited about it. And I started playing in the school band, playing saxophone and all these other random instruments, and did that through middle school, high school, and in high school I was in a program that did more rock and roll kind of stuff, and so we were putting on bigger shows and getting more into it then. So I formed a band out of that. That was all like top 40s and covers, and we did a lot of bars, but then we started getting into the private events and things of that nature, just like a wedding band basically, and super fun. But when you're basically a kid cutting your teeth with people that are your peers, you don't have someone guiding you, so
Right.
it's just learning how to run a business in the first place.
Hmm.
So, and of course, with all that comes the junk food and the, drinking a whole bunch and the
Mm.
lifestyle around all of it. Um, and then eventually I joined this band, Redneck Rodeo, that
Hmm.
I was just a fan. I was going to see this band,
Oh
and
wow.
their bass player quit. So I was like, hey, I do that, and I love country music. So that's it. And, uh, and that band was bigger than my other one, so it started getting more traction as far as a lot more shows, and I was able to quit my other job, so I was just doing music.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was killer, and I was loving it. But that also meant a lot of free alcohol and free
Mm.
whatever food, and I ended up obese. I was like 235 pounds or more. I
Oh.
actually stopped looking at the scale after that. So, um, and then yeah, I just basically got tired of it
Hmm.
and figured it out. It took a lot of work, and I, ran a couple marathons, ultra marathons, had a personal trainer. It only dropped like 20, 25 pounds.
Mm.
And then after I hurt myself from doing too much of that, my wife
Hmm.
came home and said, hey, we should like try fixing our nutrition. And like,
Mm.
what if we ate better? Maybe we could lose some weight.
Hmm.
And once we really worked on dialing that in, I lost I lost a total of 85 pounds,
Wow.
and then put on like 20 pounds of muscle since then too. So
That's awesome.
it's been a bit of ups and downs and a lot of learning and failing, and yeah,
And
super
so,
fun.
yeah, and so, I follow Nikki's page as well, and she has some
Yeah.
awesome food. And so
Oh yeah.
and that's helpful. Did she? How long has she been cooking like that? Because that's like paleo and like. Hmm.
hmm So she had already been cooking for me a bit before we switched everything, but we started really in like the paleo-ish world back in, what was that? 2016, like October of 2016 is when we decided to change. So, and when you start cooking like that, you're just trying to get the basics. So pretty much everything was chicken and vegetables doused in olive oil, right?
Yeah,
Which
that's funny.
still one of my favorite meals. Yeah.
Right, right.
But since then, as she gets better at it and I learn more about the specifics about sciencey stuff, the nerdy stuff behind it. I'm like, oh, if we cook with this oil below this temperature, it's going to be a little bit better. And then this oil we can use on here, and then we'll just douse it in olive oil. And we can add this superfood spice and this extra dessert and get all these nuances. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to like meat and veggies with olive oil doused on it.
Right.
So,
Right. So, I mean, the education process is very important. And I'm
yeah,
sure with your clients, it's you educating them, right?
yeah, definitely.
Teaching them to live better.
And we go through a lot, because there's so many different pillars to health. So nutrition obviously is massive.
Right.
It's at the core of so much of what we're doing, especially obviously if you're overweight, chances are you're not eating right. There are other factors that obviously can come into play, but if mental health is also a factor, well, once you learn about how serotonin is like 75 to 90% of that is produced in your gut. Well, if you want to feel good, you want to feel that happiness hormone serotonin coming through, but you're eating crap, you're not even giving your body the option to produce that happiness hormone. So just the way nutrition affects your physical health, but your mental health as well.
Right.
Is massive. And there's obviously so many other components as far as even using your mental health to affect your physical health. So with my clients, we try and work through as many different foundations of health between effective exercise and movement and the nutrition and the mindset to keep it all sustainable and making sure we're sleeping all right, making sure we're getting out in the sun once in a while.
Right.
So all these different pillars are so crucial. And if we're not covering all of them, if you're not covering at least like 5 out of 7, you're not giving yourself a fighting chance.
Do you have like a particular set of pillars and then you sort of work on them systematically with a client?
Yeah, kind of. So I've got a whole kind of like flow chart of different stacks that we use as well. So what I mean by that is like, okay, obviously nutrition is going to be, it's where my heart is at and where I know can make the biggest difference the quickest.
Right.
We start and also look at the mind side of things and just make sure that, okay, do we have a healthy relationship with ourself?
Right.
Because if you don't respect yourself or love yourself, what's going to keep you eating well for the long term?
Sure.
So that's kind of where we start. And then they say, well, I've got an issue with stress. So I pull up my little thing that says, okay, when we're stressed out, here's the pillars we got to hit. Are we sleeping well? Because the way that, melatonin and cortisol are related, which also is related to insulin, which is going to make you fat, right?
Right.
So, they're all very interrelated like that. But we go down, okay, are we meditating? Are we eating the right foods? Are we too deep into ketosis, which can also spike cortisol? Are we, making sure that we're getting out in the sun and in nature, because the way that that's been shown to lower blood pressure and inflammation and improve, serotonin production, things like that. So, or if it's sleep, like, okay, here's these different easy sleep hacks we can do. Like, is your room blacked out or whatever? Or do we have a nighttime routine? Or are you just like getting off the stage after all these bright lights and just trying to fall asleep?
Right.
So I've got these different charts we go through. So it's really personalized how we work to say what's going to give you the biggest bang for the buck in terms of, least amount of effort and time to the most benefit we can get.
So I have some questions that I normally ask guests on the show, and I'd love to see your opinion on what would be the most optimal sort of behaviors while you're on tour and how to conduct yourself throughout that kind of throughout that experience, right? Whether it's like, how do we eat before we go out on stage, and how to wind down. In my conversation with Neil Morris, which was actually my first episode, and that was cool.
Oh.
Yeah. And we discussed how musicians go on this roller coaster that they amp themselves up. Well, first of all, they get so amped up by the show that they have to wind down, and sometimes there's drinking involved in that winding down. And then the next day they need to wind back up, and then there's all this caffeine, and so there's stimulants and the suppressants and all these things, and so and then the food is shit. So like,
Yeah. Right.
So walk me through a day on tour that's ideal. Obviously, things don't always fall into place, but like, what's ideal for you?
Right. For me, especially because we've been so lucky that we're doing just weekends out, and I kind of push to keep that part of my routine as far as not doing multiple weeks at a time, because it makes the nutrition so much easier.
Right.
So for me, if we're only out 2-3 days, my wife will meal prep for me.
Okay. That's
so
easy.
that makes it super easy. And obviously, I still want to hang out with the guys and make sure we get quality time in as a band, because that's crazy important.
Oh, yeah.
So I purposely don't bring all the meals, so that way I'm forced to go out to dinner with the guys, because otherwise I'm liable to just sit in the hotel room and hole up and like read a book or something, because I'm one of them. But but on days where it's on things that we've done where it's longer, nutrition wise, I bring a lot of canned fish. Because it's a great dense source of fats and protein. And if you can if you're out to eat and they don't have anything good, but you happen to be the weirdo with a can of fish in his pocket, you could go get a salad and toss it on top or something.
Awesome. Yeah.
And really what it comes down to is having the mindset of being resourceful, and not just saying, oh, well, I mean, they didn't have they didn't have my meal already prepared in a way that I would want it, so I just ordered a cheeseburger.
Right.
Well, let's think about that.
Right.
Do they have any vegetables there? Any of them? If they don't have anything on the menu listed, you could ask them, like, what vegetables do you have? Can you make me meat and vegetables?
Right.
Right. I mean, and if you're getting catering from a place, then yeah, that might change. But you still have to think, okay, how can I get resourceful? How can I prepare for that kind of thing? So for me, I've always got extra food, and I've done the work ahead of time to where if they've got nothing good to eat, I won't eat.
People don't realize that when you're at a restaurant, like they have all these ingredients, and they're more than happy to like put them together in whatever configuration you ask them. When I spent some time, in strict keto and things like that, it's easy. You just say, okay, give me this, and not this. And, and most places will give you, or they'll just give it to you plain and you take off what you don't want. And, but yeah, I hear where you're coming from. You make it work. And so, like, let's say you go to a diner. What would you order in that case? Let's say it's lunchtime before the evening show.
Right. So normally what I would do is, like, I honestly dislike salads. Okay. I understand that it's like the healthy choice a lot of the time, but it's also the most boring choice half the time.
Definitely.
So if that's if that's their best configuration of meat and vegetables, that's what I'll go with. But as often as I can, if it's a place that's got any sort of fish, I'll go for like a salmon and veggies kind of thing. Or if they've got, I mean, really, it just comes down to almost always, okay, just find some configuration of meat and vegetables. And a lot of the time that is a salad.
Right.
So it's just not fun when you're eating this salad that's like their worst iceberg lettuce if it's the only diner around. Wow. And they've got like whatever crappy canned chicken that they threw on it. And, the other guys are at least eating something fun like wings. It's just not that fun. So in which case, sometimes I will just go with wings and get it without all the sauce.
Yeah.
At least it's still meat and something I can eat there. But, I mean, it takes a lot for you to see me eating an actual bowl of spaghetti or donuts or any sorts of like breads and things.
What's the circumstance that you would, if you would?
Oh. So I'll tell you a story that exactly exemplifies that. So we were playing a wedding up in Paso Robles.
Okay.
So it's like Central California, beautiful wine country. And they had this gourmet donut set up. And it was in between the stage and the bar and the bathrooms were over there. So if I wanted anything, I had to walk by it over and over.
Mhm.
Right. And we know that willpower is a finite resource. So I was like, oh God, this is dangerous. Like, no, that's not even food. That's not food. Let's not even go there.
Right.
So, but we had driven all day, and a lot of the times when we're driving, I'm just fasting until we get wherever we're going because I don't want to be the guy that has to stop to pee or whatever more often. Like I just, so if I'm just not eating that much, I'm going to be okay. We get to the hotel, I eat plenty, but apparently my body didn't get that signal, plus breaking down that willpower and then a glass of wine. And my guitarist was like, just have a bite of this old fashioned. I was like, I don't know, man, I shouldn't do that.
Right.
And I had one bite, and I was like a junkie. I just fell off the wagon. I think I had 6 donuts. I brought one on stage, and in between lines when the other guy was singing, I would go back and have a bite. And this was like last year. This isn't even like at the beginning of my journey either. And it's just like, and I normally don't drink beer anymore either because I know it doesn't make me feel good. But I was just like, screw it, man. I'm having donuts. I'm gonna have some beer. And it was like, what are you doing, man? So it was fun.
Right. But that's okay once in a while.
Yeah.
It's what you do most of the time that matters.
Right.
And then you don't beat yourself up too much, or like people are this happens often where people will go off the deep end after like just missing one little thing on their routine. They're like, oh, okay, everything's in the shit bag now, and I'm just gonna like go off on the deep end, right? It's like that's okay for like one sitting. Okay, do what you're gonna do. Right. But you mentioned fasting, right? Mm-hmm. And as you know, I've done a lot of that, and you do it as well. Yeah. Recently I've done a lot more than I've ever done. I've hit my personal best records of a dry fast and a wet fast. For those who don't know, wet fast is like you drink water. I put salts in my water for electrolytes, and dry fast is not drinking water or eating at all, right? So I did like 48 or 50 hour dry, and wow. I did like 6 days wet, right? Mm-hmm. So which is great. I got like pretty lean pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
In fact, with the dry, just 2 days not eating or drinking, I went from 179.2 or something to like 168 something. Like it was really crazy, and and you could tell it was just straight fat loss. That the body actually breaks down when your body's forced to, in this dry state, actually makes its own water, metabolic water, out of the fat, because fat has the hydrogen, and you breathe the oxygen, you get the H2O right there. So it's very interesting. But of course, I would consult a doctor, do all the other things you have to do. Right. I don't want to be liable for people keeling over from fasting, right? Do your own research, don't be an idiot.
Exactly.
But that said, I mean, so the reason I brought up fasting is, for me, it's the best undo button. It's like, if I messed up, I just don't eat. Mm-hmm. And you give your body a chance to assimilate all that food, instead of kind of continuing to, spike the insulin and just, keep all that stuff and keep storing. You just give your body a chance to use what you already ate.
Right. And that's a big, especially with some of these foods, like a pile of donuts and beer, it's also massively inflammatory.
Right.
So it's, we know that the calories in, calories out thing doesn't work like people think it should. Mm-hmm. But if we think of it from that inflammatory standpoint as well, it's okay. So I had 7 donuts and a handful of beers. Like, my body needs time, to figure out what just happened and how to heal from that.
Right.
And if you just keep eating is like really metabolically taxing as well. And just, it takes a lot of energy for your body to do that. Mm-hmm. So if you slammed all that food down, and then the next morning you wake up and first thing you do is you chug a coffee and have, even if it's other healthy food, like, your body's like, ugh, more? Okay. And you didn't give it that chance, where that's why, when you say fasting is a great way to kind of undo almost, it's going to tame that inflammation because your body has time to really process all that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's still other factors like the like gluten antibodies are still in your system for like 21 days and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
you can have some downrange effects.
Mm-hmm.
And while fasting isn't the silver bullet for literally everything, oh my gosh, once you get a handle on it, it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I combine
Yeah.
that with like sauna,
Hmm.
which is great. I mean, again, I warn people to do their own research and go into things gradually. But when I did those dry fasts, I went to the sauna,
Oh yeah.
and so sauna with dry fast, you force your body to make that water. And
Yeah.
I go to the sauna and my gym actually has a sauna and a cold pool. It has a cold plunge.
Dude.
So I just go. I spend. Yeah, it's so good. I spend. I'm in the sauna until I get dizzy, and then
Yep.
and then I go by the cold plunge and I do some Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah.
And then I go in the cold plunge for like 2 minutes and
Mhm.
I'm golden. That's at the end of my workout.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's we got to hang out sometime and do all this stuff together.
Oh
You're my,
yeah,
you're
dude.
my kind of guy with all this stuff.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually just started at a CrossFit gym over here
Mm.
because I just needed to outsource the programming of my workouts.
Hmm.
It's like I can do it myself. I do it at home all the time. But now it's like, you know what? If I just go there, they're going to tell me what to do so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
But it's not like at the gym that I was at where they had the sauna and all this stuff. It's like, the benefits outweigh this and that sometimes. And so sometimes I'll just crank up the heater in my van before I go into the gym. So that right when I start it up, it's just like hot. And then I get
Sure.
home and I turn on the shower as hot as it can go too.
Uh,
So that way, and it's not as good, but it still sucks. And that's it's kind of what you're looking for at the end of the day is, are you getting that, you know, level of discomfort for your body to learn to adapt more and for your mind to learn to adapt more to that kind of thing.
People don't make themselves uncomfortable often enough.
Hmm.
I think we should daily put ourselves through just a little bit of discomfort, right? Whether it's something like temperature or it's something along the lines of doing something that we have a little fear of, to just to
Hmm.
condition ourselves out of that. But also we live in chronically climate controlled environments, and we lose ability to deal with minor stressors, right? So what's that called?
Yeah.
Hormesis, right?
Yeah.
So little I read that's like transient stressors are good, like quick,
Hmm.
like back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I mean like back in the like early human life, let's say.
Yeah.
It was there was an animal and we address it and we fight it or we run, right? And that's that moment. Today we have like the stressor of like our rent is
Mhm.
due, or some prolonged stress that's just unnatural, and we have all the stress
Yeah.
from that built up, and so prolonged stress is not good. That's
Hmm.
and the more that we put ourselves through these little transient stressors, the more resistance we build up, and our immune systems benefit from it and all that.
Hmm. And that's where you'll hear so many people just say, like, no matter what, every morning, cold shower.
Oh yeah,
Like, yeah, it sucks for 2 minutes, man. It's 2 minutes. You can deal with that.
oh yeah.
And then you get out. It's like your body starts to learn what is an actual physical stress versus what
Hmm.
is, a mental stress,
That's right.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's and that's honestly probably the main reason that I do fasting
Mm.
is for that specifically, like mental, okay, what is really uncomfortable about this? What's really so bad about not eating for a few days?
Hmm.
If you've never done it before, oh my God, that is a big old scary thing.
Right.
But if it's your eighth, 72-hour fast, you're like, yeah, I've done this before. It's okay.
Yeah.
And then when you do go on tour and you're like, there's no food here for lunch, dude, I've gone 5 days without food. I don't need to eat this. Like, I'll find food later, tomorrow or tonight. Like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
People don't realize this is why education is so important. People are just they think I hear this a lot, that they think their stomach acid is going to consume them or something. You know,
Yeah.
they don't realize, and this is what I explain to people. I tell people we're actually made to fast. Because if you look at the response of the body after periods of not eating, we go into ketosis and we have all these healing things and just the amazing results of what's the word I'm looking for?
Autophagy.
Autophagy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And cell apoptosis. Right.
Hmm.
So that's an amazing thing. So the body basically goes into all these healing mechanisms when we're not eating, and we don't
Yeah.
give it a chance because our blood's always in our digestive system. If we're eating the 6 meals a day, that health experts, quote unquote, are prescribing.
Yeah.
And so I'm much more of a fan of letting the body take care of itself a little bit. So
Hmm. And
yeah.
that's a really big mindset shift for a lot of people.
Mm.
We've been conditioned for how long to believe, well, they say if I have 6 small meals a day that I'm gonna, I don't know, get skinny, right? Well, okay,
Hmm.
what if we flip that and say, what do we need for optimal health?
Right.
And is what they're saying, does that line up with that? What does the research actually say?
Right.
Have you ever dug into that? And really starting to change your brain from just following the conditioning of what everybody says should work to figuring out, okay, what does the science say now?
Hmm.
And what's going to work specifically for you? It's such like a paradigm shift that people don't go through if they've never, hit some sort of event that made them consider all of this.
Right.
So it's so important to help people, what we do, we try and help people realize, look, there is a problem here
Hmm.
and there are so many solutions, but right now you're stuck back in 1973 eating 6 carby meals and going for 3-hour runs every day.
And eating low fat and all that
Yeah.
nonsense. Hmm.
And it's just not like, obviously science changes,
Yeah.
right? And that back at some point, people thought that was the best. So that's what they did. And now we've gone and seen the downstream effects of that and said, oh, I don't think that worked. Let's try something new.
Hmm.
And if we can stay kind of on not necessarily the cutting edge of science, because they may not have the long-term effects dialed in,
Mm.
but you look at what happened over the last 10 years in science and in nutrition science and all these in all the health sciences. Oh my God, we understand now your body can handle time without food.
Yeah.
And we've known this for millennia because otherwise religions wouldn't have fasting in part of their protocols.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know?
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's how the body works.
One thing I explain to people, intermittent fasting has now reached a point where everyone and their mother has heard of it. And I'm
Hmm.
glad, you
Yeah.
know, it's a very good thing that that's become the norm, right?
Hmm.
That, people have, gotten to understand that and, or at least heard of it, right?
Yeah.
But, what we need to realize is all of the other stuff that we're mentioning, the longer fasts and the dry fasts and things like that, those take time. They're going to take time for the mainstream to sort of catch up with, and the long term studies, as far as clinical trials are concerned, that's hard to study in humans, and that's going to take time. So before we can start experimenting with that before 2040 or whenever we're going to have some
Yeah.
actual like clinical data on it, and you're going to have all
Right.
this problems already. Yeah, so it's a good idea to kind of be on the edge and and get to know your body.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's one thing that I think is really underrated is just testing on yourself.
Hmm.
Just try it out.
Right.
Just try it out. How many people have gone at least one day without food and not died?
Right.
Right? If they did it, you could probably do it.
Yeah, there's this controversial figure who's behind a big part of this fasting movement, which is Cole Robinson. You heard of him?
I haven't, no.
Right. He has the snake diet, right?
Okay.
Yeah, which is very interesting, right? His snake diet page on Facebook has like over 250,000 members. It's a
Gotcha.
private group, right? And he's taking like thousands of people through like long fasting protocols, and his whole thing is just he gives you like a little electrolyte amount to drink, and just here, these are the ingredients. Just find sodium and potassium and maybe some magnesium, maybe some sodium bicarbonate, which is a baking soda.
Baking soda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just throw that all together in this amount, whatever. Put it in your water and just fast 72s, 92s.
Yeah.
And people are doing this and they're losing massive amounts of weight, right?
Hmm.
and fat, really,
Yeah.
because your body will prioritize losing fat. What's paradoxical in this case is like when people lose, if people lose weight on a 6 meal a day, they actually lose more muscle.
Hmm.
That's what studies are starting to show. They lose more muscle because when you fast, you have increases of growth hormone, which
Hmm.
is make you more muscle sparing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's like when I did that 6 day fast, I was training every day.
Yeah.
And but you have to be careful because you can't train to the point of like I was training maybe 70% intensity, no failure, right? Because
Hmm.
that would really start to require amino acids and stuff to
Right.
and so at that point you could just enough to tell your body I still need this.
Right. And that's the key with when you're fasting and training. It's just like just enough so your body knows, hey, I need this muscle for something still.
Yeah.
Have you done any, have you trained with BFR bands before?
BFR bands.
Blood flow restriction bands.
Oh, I thought about it. I mean, like I wanted to try it out, but I didn't get my hands on
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, I learned of them from Dr. Pompa, who's big in the fasting world as well.
Mm.
Between him and Ben Greenfield, they're
Oh
two of
yeah.
my guys that I look at for a lot of this stuff. They, and especially if I'm going to be on the road and I decide to do some fasting and I need to have some training, the blood flow restriction bands work great for turning up, for like telling your muscles, oh man, I do need to hold on to this. So it like turns up lactic acid production in the way that it pulls up in your muscles.
Mm.
And so it gives you a higher stimulus with lower, what do you call it?
Load.
Lower load. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is also awesome for if you've got tendonitis or any sorts of injuries like that,
Mm.
because you're not going to put that weight on the joint or that area, but you're still going to be providing that stimulus, and the extra like growth hormone and that kind of stuff is going to be concentrated to work on healing the areas.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So,
I didn't realize
yeah.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's super powerful when you're fasting, because when you're fasting, your body's going to go in and heal a lot of these things as well.
Mm.
And you can stack the fasting with the blood flow restriction band training. And then I've heard from Ben Greenfield and a couple other sources before about taking digestive enzymes along with that.
Mm.
When you're not eating, somehow the magic of digestive enzymes goes into healing your injuries better.
Well, that's interesting. Just sort of for personal, and I'm sure anyone who's decides to take up some fasting or is already fasting, be curious to hear more on this. I'm curious about, okay, so digestive enzymes. What else
Yeah.
is useful on a fast?
It depends on the kind of fast that you're doing, but for me, lately it's been I'll have a cup of green tea in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Wait, you cut out for a second.
but really,
You,
it's just
you said green
that.
tea.
Some people do.
Uh huh. Yeah, you
Yeah,
cut,
I'll have
mhm.
green tea just for that, just the extra alertness
Mhm.
during the workday. And if I feel like, and if I'm testing my ketones and blood sugar and it's not working how I want it to, a good long walk really helps. Burn through some glycogen and turn up ketone production. And you can even add in, and depending on the kind of fast you're doing and the goals you're looking for, if you're looking to really get your digestion to completely chill out, then this might not be perfect. But if you're looking specifically for autophagy and fat loss,
Mhm.
you can add in some apple cider vinegar, which would turn up AMP-K in your, what is it? It turns it up in your body, but turns it down in your hypothalamus. So cravings go down and fat burning goes up.
That's cool.
So,
Yeah.
so there's all these tiny little hacks. At the end of the day, just like stop eating, you'll be okay. But there's all these,
Yeah.
I always try and bring it back to like, okay, what do people actually need to hear versus what do I just like to
I feel
talk
the same
about?
way. Yeah. No, I hear you because like you can get so efficient and you can think of all these things, but then someone who's just like so new to this can get like so flustered with it. It's like, oh, like okay,
Yeah.
just stop eating.
Yeah, take
Right.
a day off.
Take a day
Yeah.
out, and it's funny because that's like I think that's Cole's whole mo. It's really funny watching him because he's just like he's so intense, right? So if you watch one of his like videos, he's constantly yelling, and some people need that. I mean, like there's not many people out there who are like really abrasive, right, about it, right? But helpful. right? So he occupies that that space. So it's just funny watching him, but it is interesting. But yeah, you're right. People need something that's just like stupid simple, you
Yeah.
know, and it's just like take a day off, you'll be fine, you know.
Hmm.
You know, if you and these are little helpful things like, hey, if you have some apple cider vinegar laying around, just go for that, right?
Yeah.
But once it starts to, you know, get all complicated, like when I watch Ben Greenfield's like channel, oh my God,
Yeah.
like you see him like going and like all this light therapy, and he's wearing these weird devices, and it's just like shit. Who's gonna actually do
Yeah.
half of this stuff?
He is responsible for so much of my money leaving my bank account. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I've got all the blue blockers and like the different light bulbs for nighttime and uh you know, different essential oil diffusers that I use, like rosemary for like mental acuity and peppermint for a little extra stimulation. And then, you know, all these tiny little hacks that at the end of the day, does it actually matter?
Right.
You know, like, yeah, I mean, most of these are like, might improve your day 0.5%.
It adds up.
So, it does, yeah. But there, you know, if I'm worrying for a long time, I was worrying about all this stuff, and then I wasn't actually like sweating,
Right.
you know, like exercising hard enough to sweat for like, it's been 2 weeks. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just missing it. Like, none of this stuff matters if I didn't just go work out one day.
Yeah.
You know, it comes back to those foundations, those pillars.
Well, it's really efficiency. It's like what's going to be the thing that moves the needle the most? Do the most of that, you know. It's like 80-20 analysis, you know.
Exactly.
You know, and exercise, just bar none, is like number one, right?
Yeah, exercise, nutrition, sleep,
Yep.
sunlight,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and you know, making sure that your mindset is okay.
Right.
I think that's a massively underrated part in the whole health space.
Well, let's switch to
Because
that. Yeah, so like explain what, you know, how what role that plays and how you would work with somebody on that regard.
yeah, so a little story about how I really came to understand it more is, like I said, I got way into all of these really nerdy things and the biohacking this and that and making sure everything was absolutely optimal in every way. But it wasn't until I started actually coaching people in their health that I suddenly felt this unbelievable sense of fulfillment. And suddenly, every health issue that I'd had over the last year, even while optimizing everything, was just
Wow.
like sleeping like a baby, no matter what. Even if I didn't sleep like a baby, I'd wake up and be like, you know what, man, it's cool. Life is good. And then I wouldn't be stressed out about not sleeping well.
Right.
And then, oh, you know what? I forgot to meal prep. You know what, man? I'll out my things, and I don't have my lion's mane in my coffee this morning, and I don't have, you know, all these tiny things working well. And so once you can understand, you know, and that's just if you think about it, yeah, if you're happier, you're gonna feel better
Right.
at the base sense of it. And there's more mindset shifts that go along with a health journey, right? And realizing that you're worth investing in. You know, you should invest in yourself, your time, your energy, and your money. And that mindset shift is tough for people because they don't always love or respect themselves. You know, I talk to so many musicians about this stuff, and almost always it comes back to, I mean, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I just don't really like myself.
How do you rectify that? How do you address that?
There's a few ways. One is take action on that. Do something that just goes against that belief. Because at the end of the day, that's just a belief. That's just something you've programmed in through enough repetitions of thinking that set of thoughts.
Right.
So do something that says you love yourself. And it can be as far as just, I'm going to get myself a good meal. Like I'm gonna buy the organic chicken today. Right? Like, no, I'm worth investing in myself. Right? On that end. Or if you want to get wildly uncomfortable, this is way worse than buying a better chicken. You go look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I love you.
Yeah.
God, the first time I did that, I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's weird. That's not what men do. You know? Like, oh, you know, wildly uncomfortable. But starting to rectify that and really start to see, okay, what's wrong with saying that?
Right.
Shouldn't you love yourself or respect yourself? Because if you do, then you're going to make changes in your health. You're going to take action.
Yeah.
And, I work in a lot of what I do is weight loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's people that almost every musician I talk to says, I need to lose weight,
It's an
or,
epidemic.
man, I just don't feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those two things every time.
Right.
And the weight loss is huge. What is it? Like 70 something percent of Americans are overweight or obese.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And bringing that back to the mindset, I can tell you exactly what foods to avoid to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But if I just tell you, hey, don't eat vegetable oil ever again, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Whereas if we say, okay, if you really deeply care about what's going on in the processes in your body, and you want your body to work well for the long term, and you want to be there for your family, you want to be there performing great on stage so that the audience has a good time. Right. So that where your other bandmates are having a good time because, you're helping them all perform well and tying all this emotion into it. Then you're like, oh my God, vegetable oil's hurting every aspect of my life. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Maybe I do care about vegetable oil. And that's when we can start seeing those really permanent shifts. Okay. What is it that's actually going to make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
And we can tailor the actual foods to each person. I've got processes that we work through that we find out which foods are causing inflammation for each person, right? And we can get super specific. Like I know if I have whiskey on stage, I'm forgetting lyrics within 5 minutes. If I have tequila, I'm clear. So we can tailor that really well. But without the mindset behind that of I'm going to take care of myself so that I can fill in the blank,
Right.
so that I can be there for my family.
Right. So if you
So
would,
that I, yeah,
if
go
you
for it.
if you would build someone up from the ground up, it would be first like you need to care about yourself and about the impact that you could potentially have, right? Even beyond yourself, your impact, and then you need to care for yourself to have that impact, right?
Yes.
And then that can kind of trickle down from there, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have nothing else at your disposal other than the will to improve, you're going to get better.
Right.
If you don't have that will, it doesn't matter which diet is most perfect for your body. It doesn't, because you're not going to do it.
Right.
Because you're going to say, yeah, I could, or I could have 7 donuts and a couple beers because it feels more fun.
Right.
That's going to comfort me in this moment. And I don't really care about future me. I care about me now. And that's not what's going to really get you where you want to be in life.
Right. Well, that's, so on that, like when I'm coaching somebody, I really start with like values, like identifying, okay, well, what are your core values? What's important to you? As you said, and then you got to start from there and just realizing, okay, well, what am I doing right now that's aligned with these values and what's not aligned with these values? And sometimes they don't know. Sometimes people aren't aware of how food affects them, and other habits that they have, or even watching the news excessively or something like that,
Yes.
because as much as what we eat affects our bodies and our minds and everything, what we consume informationally is could be just as toxic or helpful, right?
Exactly. And I talk with my clients. I actually made a video recently about thinking hardware versus software, right? So the hardware is, what is your body actually doing, right? What are the chemicals it's producing? What's going on physiologically in this body? And then the software is, what is the mindset side of things? And when you talk about the news itself, some people are like, yeah, that's not going to affect my body, right? We can tie that directly to the hardware part of the equation. If you're constantly watching the news and seeing every single thing that's wrong, that's driving up your cortisol, which is stressing you out, which is turning up the way that insulin shoves things into your fat cells. So if you're watching the news too much, we can literally say that's making you fat.
Right.
For the people that are skeptical on how the brain affects the body, there's so much to it that, like, it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
If you've ever had a thought of a lemon and your mouth watered,
Right.
right? That's your mind affecting your body.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever looked at a really good looking girl and felt something funny going on inside,
Right.
like that's your mind affecting your body.
Oh
So
yeah.
of course the news can affect you physiologically.
Yeah.
Stressing out about your guitarist being late for the eighth show in a row. That's going to affect you physiologically.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to care about every single input, not just food, not just what's going in, but what's going in mentally.
Yeah.
You know.
And on that note, you mentioned like, something like the guitarist showing up 8 times, that's chronic, right?
Yeah.
And so when you do have a chronic stressor, it's like then you need to perhaps work on framing that in a different way, or even practicing forgiveness or something like that.
Yeah.
Because then otherwise you're sort of holding resentment, and you're destroying yourself from within,
Yeah.
from this just ongoing stressor. The stressor's not going to change, but you're taking on all this damage from it.
Yeah.
So what would you do to like mitigate something like that? Like, let's say you have an ongoing stressor, or a client does. What are some practices that you would employ, or techniques you'd use?
Yeah. Honestly, the first one that I go for every time is it's really just anything you can do to help you realize that it's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So fake a smile.
Mm.
Do some fake laughter, because you're going to laugh like an idiot for a second. Then you're going to laugh at yourself for sounding like an idiot for laughing at nothing. Right. And then
Right.
suddenly you just break this loop. Like, okay, I'm out of this negative spiral of like, he's late again. He's going to miss that one note in the bridge like he always misses. And then like he never helps pack up at the end of the night. Right. And you're just going to get in that loop over and over. You got to break that.
Right.
And then say, okay, well, what is actually going to make a difference here?
Mm-hmm.
Have I had a conversation with him on it, or have I just played through it in my head on how it would probably go?
Mm.
Chances are, if you haven't had the conversation, you don't know how it's actually going to go.
Right.
And maybe you talk with him and he says, "Oh, I had no clue that sound check was actually at 9. I thought it was at 9:30."
Right.
Oh, okay, cool. So I should probably just, you can always take some sort of action
Mm-hmm.
to work in that negative spiral. And if you do talk to him and he says, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to show up that time." I'm like, okay, well, that sucks. So we have to reframe the way that we see the situation.
Mm.
Obviously, there's other actions we can take, like firing the guy.
Right.
There's always someone that can play better. But reframe the belief around it. So, okay, how can I work on this myself? Or even, how is this my fault?
Right. That's big.
Did I not set the precedent early enough that this is crucial to the culture of our band?
Mm. Yeah, I hear that.
If you don't respect him in some way, so he's not showing you that respect.
Mm-hmm.
So always finding a way to flip it around. And so first off, don't make it so serious. Don't take yourself so seriously. Take a step back. But then second of all, you can't change his mind right then and there.
Right.
You can only change yours. So if you can ask yourself, how is this my fault? And try and reframe the way that you see the whole situation, it gives you the control back.
Right. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's very big. People put blame on other people, and it's disempowering to blame others. You lose the power yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Who is it that really came on the scene big with that whole notion?
There's Tom Bilyeu was one of them.
Bilyeu is huge on that. Yeah. I definitely watched a lot of that Impact Theory, and yeah, it's good stuff. Again, brain food, right?
Yes.
And who is that Navy SEAL?
Jocko Willing.
Oh, Jocko. I read his book.
Yeah.
And what is that? Extreme ownership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he coaches like these Fortune 500 companies, and makes them more effective by the management taking more responsibility for really leading their team instead of putting blame on the subordinates. And it's a very important thing. And even if you're equals with the people you're working with, you really have to take responsibility for being clear in your communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. That's huge.
One example that Tom Bilyeu gives on this, just to take it to the absolute extreme and show you
Mm-hmm.
that it's possible in every situation,
Mm-hmm.
is he says, if a meteorite fell on my wife
Mm.
and she dies, it's my fault because I know that there are services that track these things, and I could have potentially at least checked their website to see if that was going to happen.
Mm.
And if their systems aren't good enough, I could have invested in them to help get their systems up and running better. So that way
Mm-hmm.
I could have seen this coming and saved my wife from getting hit by a meteorite.
Right.
Right? Obviously, some things we don't see coming. But when you take that level of ownership and control, everything in life just is easier
Right.
almost. You've got more clarity on, oh, okay, I screwed up. What do I need to do instead of this asshole over here showed up late again and he just doesn't care about he never asks me how I feel.
Right.
Have you ever told him that's important to you? Right?
Yeah.
There's so many little things you can do in your life that change completely when you take that extreme ownership,
Yeah.
you know?
It's very important. It's very important. So on mindset or on training the mind, and I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure you do this. Do you meditate?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your practice? Like, what does that look like?
At the moment, I've been using the 10% Happier app.
Okay.
And for a long time, I was just doing box breathing for 20 minutes straight or some sort of other breathing exercise. And once I started learning about more of the guided meditations, I realized that, I don't know, they've got more insights that I didn't have myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's important to balance guided meditations with unguided time in your own brain. But that one, it's helpful because they just give you some extra insights and guidance on kind of where to direct your thoughts. And it's almost like having a personal trainer
Right.
say, here's what you're going to meditate on today.
Yeah, it's good. It's the guided is helpful. Even if you do have a
Mhm.
grasp on it, it's something that you can really, um, that it's something that it can. You know what it's going to be, and you just follow along, and you don't have to. You can just kind of settle in and just do the thing. You're more
Right.
likely to kind of stay on point than
Yeah.
that because when you're meditating without that, you can kind of drift off for most of the time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
When you have someone saying, if your mind has drifted,
yeah,
think about your breath. Oh, crap. Yeah, it did. Thank you.
right.
Otherwise, there's been times where it's like, that was 20 minutes. All I thought about was that TV show I watched last night. Especially when I was watching Game of Thrones. Like, oh my God, I could not do a solo meditation. Like, it was just not working.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, I normally do combine it with another 5 to 10 minutes of my own solo time. Just
Okay.
once I've kind of calmed down, then I can focus in on just breathing. Or if there's something really important that I do need to think about, I let my brain marinate on
Right.
that for 10
Interesting.
minutes. Some visualization as well for like what I really want to see for myself.
Oh, interesting. So visualization. Was there some other kind of like practices similar to that, like gratitude or anything like that you sort of intentionally practice?
Yeah, my entire morning routine is all built around how do I go from however I woke up to being like just pumped,
Okay.
right? And so, and not necessarily like, oh, I'm so excited about everything in life, but like, how can I show up fully for the day? And it doesn't work 110% every single day, but it gets me closer. So I start off with some, normally it's either a stream of consciousness journaling or some fear journaling where I'm talking about what am I really afraid of. And it kind of helps clear out some of the thoughts that I've had about those fears.
Oh, interesting.
So, and it helps me really hone in on what is it exactly I'm afraid of in this situation. So, am I afraid of calling this guy because I'm afraid of him rejecting me? Or am I just procrastinating because I'm hungry? Or what is it that I'm really afraid of? And I just kind of start writing and see what happens, and that kind of helps me deepen my emotional connections as well, because I've historically had a lot of issues connecting emotionally to myself or anybody else. So that helps me feel, even if it's just feeling more negative emotions, I'm feeling more emotions, so I can be more empathic. I don't know what the right word is for that.
Empathetic. Empathic, whatever.
I can feel if you're sad a little better. Right? So, and
I
from
feel
there,
people.
I feel you, man. I feel you. So after I kind of get some of that out, or sometimes it's just like my brain is rattling around some crap, so I got to write it down and see what's in there. Right. It feels like 18 things, and I start writing, and I realize it's just 2 things on my to-do list that I need to do.
Right.
So that's step 1. Step 2 is then celebrating my wins from the last like day or two, just to show myself, oh yeah, I've done some cool shit. You know, even in the last day or two, even if I had some real down days, like, man, I still took time for myself to go to CrossFit, or I still took time to like, just, you know, I took a minute yesterday to myself and just eat in silence because I needed it. Or if I did a lot of cool stuff, then I'm like, oh, I did this, I did that. I scheduled this thing. I got like how many new clients, and they're super stoked and they're making progress. And look at this guy who lost how much weight. And, you know, there's days where it's awesome. But that helps you concentrate on the good things in life. Right. And then I do gratitude to really say, you know, what am I grateful for all around, not just what is cool that I did.
Right.
So that little set of journaling right there really helps kind of like break through whatever I'm feeling in the morning. And then it's some sort of, I'll normally do some yoga with some singing exercises to get my body and my voice kind of wrapped up together.
Interesting. Wait, so you're doing yoga and you're singing at the same time?
Yeah.
Break that down.
Yeah. So basically it's modifications on sun salutation, so if you haven't done much yoga and you're like, yoga's for crazy hippies, what's wrong with you? All it really is trying to move your body mindfully, so that way you can connect more with how you feel. Especially if you're into losing weight and health at all, you need to know what your body feels like.
Right.
You know, if you don't know that you're constantly having your shoulders up because you're tense and you're anxious about something, and you've never asked, what does it feel like to be anxious? You know, oh, what does anxiety feel like? Oh, it feels like my shoulders are tense. Well, if I lower them and relax them, maybe I won't feel so anxious. Right. So
yeah, people don't realize how much your body changing would change your mind.
Yes.
Or your mind changing your body. Your body is your mind, you know, and
it's so interrelated.
Yeah, I used to listen to a lot of Elliot Hulse in his early videos. You ever heard of Elliot Hulse?
No.
Yeah, so Elliot Hulse had some awesome videos, a fitness guy, but he spoke a lot of this kind of stuff. It's like your body is your mind and becoming the strongest version of yourself, and he would go on rants. And anyway, so it's very interesting stuff. I haven't followed him for a long time, but one thing that he did discuss a lot is, you know, just the body's chronic holding patterns and things like that, and how like certain exercises would relieve you mentally in different ways. And so
right,
it's huge.
It is. And even if it's something as simple as figuring out how to roll your shoulders back to like get yourself to feel, you know, when your shoulders are back and your chest is a little bit bigger, you feel more confident and you feel less anxious just every time. So if you start to be mindful of that, and you don't have to do a full yoga practice to figure this out, just try it out right now.
Yeah.
You can realize that something like yoga, or it could be any workout, you just got to move at some point and feel what your body feels like.
Yeah. So let's go back to that vocal with the yoga thing.
Yeah.
So how does that work exactly? Are you singing scales? Are you singing particular like songs and like, you know, going through certain movements? Like, is it structured? Is it the same every time? What does that look like?
The movements themselves are basically the same every time. And if I feel a particular tightness in my body, just suddenly, when you start to get really into this, your body starts to like just say, hold on, stay there for a second.
Right.
Or like, you need to move your body this way. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, I'll do that. But generally it follows the same flow every morning. And from when I was working with a voice teacher, I have all these recordings of our voice lessons. And so there's a couple that I honed in on that were the most effective for getting my vocal coordination together. And so I've got one that I do if it's first thing in the morning that's really a lot of low kind of rattling, like 5-note scales. And so I just turn that on and I start doing my yoga flow and sing along with whatever she tells me to do every time. And so that just gets me through. And I've got other ones for if I've already warmed up once, then I go to round 2, which is this other voice lesson that was helpful. And so those are basically, if I'm going to do, I call it just yoga sing. It's just one word.
Yeah.
So when
That's
I'm
a
writing out my morning routine.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely unique. I can't say I've heard that before, so that's very cool.
Yeah, and you hear about guys like who was it? Like Jamie Vendera, the vocal coach,
Yep.
has people like running on treadmills while singing their entire show.
Wow.
I think it was him working with the guy from Iron Maiden. I don't remember his name, but he would just put the treadmill on and like put it up to an angle and say, okay, how high is your heart rate during an actual show?
Hmm.
Let's put it up so your heart rate gets up to like show adrenaline level, and now you
Hmm.
have to sing your entire set while running.
Wow.
I mean, and now when I'm on stage and I'm jumping around and doing all these crazy moves on stage, like it's no problem. I just
Right.
stand back up and suddenly I'm able to sing and I project and my breath is supported properly.
Wow.
And it comes from every single day coordinating my voice with my whole body. I can't separate those at all, or else I blow up my voice like that night.
Right. Yeah, because
So
you lose your support.
yeah.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
and
Wow.
especially if you're
Hmm.
playing, I've been playing over 200 shows a year, the last handful of years, and you have to take care of everything at such a level when you're playing that much.
Hmm.
Not to mention when you're, in sessions and rehearsals and writing at home as well. You need your voice for all these things.
Hmm.
And if you're teaching lessons, during the day as well,
Hmm.
your voice is being constantly used. You have to have a massively solid foundation.
Hmm. What are some other
So,
vocal maintenance things that you use?
yeah, actually, there's a podcast called The Naked Vocalist,
Hmm.
and they mentioned this straw singing technique.
Hmm.
So you take a cocktail straw. Actually, I have one right here. Hold on. So you take a cocktail straw
Yeah.
and you just sing through it, whatever it is you got to sing. So, and the way that it works is by singing through it, it does something called occlusion.
Hmm.
So, which helps regulate the pressure of your vocal cords because there's how much pressure going up, and there's supposed to be enough pressure coming down to help them stay in a nice neutral space.
Hmm.
So, when you're using this,
Hmm.
if you suddenly can't make a note happen, that means that the pressure is unequal.
Interesting.
Something like that. It's hard for me to describe exactly how it works, but
Hmm.
all I know is after doing this forever and hearing it on that podcast, it is the quickest way for me to get my coordination back together.
Hmm.
And I'll just sing up and down, like find where there's any breaks, and then I know I need to work in that little break.
Interesting.
And then singing like along with whatever songs you're going to play that night,
Hmm.
you just hum through the straw, and you're building that muscle memory for coordination for that specific song in your set.
Wow. Okay.
So if I gave one vocal exercise that everybody in the world should just do, it's singing through a cocktail straw.
Wow.
And it sucks for the first like couple weeks because you're like, this doesn't work, this is dumb. And then suddenly it starts to shift and gets easier. It's just like meditation, where the first couple weeks you sit down, you're like, this is the stupidest thing. I'm frustrated. I'm bad at this. What's the point? But after that consistent practice, you really start to build memory.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
I only do two things vocally, is that yoga singing and then singing through the straw.
And how about like, is there any particular beverages or anything like that that you avoid or you go toward to kind of get your voice looped up or anything like that?
For the warming up side, it's I'm okay with drinking something hot beforehand. Honestly, the thing that makes my voice feel best is bone broth,
Okay.
and that just feels fantastic. But otherwise, just staying hydrated.
Hmm.
On stage, I know that, like I said earlier, whiskey makes me forget lyrics,
Yeah.
and tequila, I can, as of right now, and after all this work that I've done, I find if I have one, no big deal at all. If I have two, I get really pumped for a little bit, and then I realize that my motor control has gone down just a touch, and that bums me out because now I'm not operating at 100%.
Right. Yeah. Now
You
you,
know,
you seem like someone who would be, if you're not optimized, or you'd be upset about it, or you'd be annoyed
yes,
about it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then you have to learn how to strike that balance. Like, okay, I screwed up. Take a breath. Operate at 98%. Just do your best with what you got.
Yeah.
But before that, it was like, "Oh, you idiot! What's wrong with you? How dare you do this to yourself?"
Right.
Um,
Well, yeah,
and then
that's the
fall off into drinking more after that.
that's
So
funny. That's kind of like the dark side of self-development, right? So it's like
yeah,
it's when you fall short of your expectations of yourself, and that's one of people's criticisms of the whole thing is like, well, I don't want to set these expectations because then when I don't reach them, I'm going to feel bad about myself or goals in general, right? And so
right.
how would you address that? How would you address someone with those kinds of criticisms? Say,
It's I've been there. I've been there a lot, and I feel like I'm really started to get a handle on it the last couple months. But I spent a lot of time, especially in my health, being what's the term, orthorexic, where you're just so into it that if something little goes wrong, like you're just off the deep end almost,
right?
and that is more unhealthy than if you just kind of screwed up and said whatever. That's all
Right.
right. So I've spent time in that space, and it really, to me, has come down to like how we talked about that self-love. And you can say, I get it. All right, I didn't hit my goals today, which means two things. I either set too many goals or I didn't work hard enough, which means that my body and brain probably weren't sufficiently like aligned and well fueled. And it's pretty much one of those two things. So if I know it's those two things, I look back and say, what did I do wrong?
Right.
And then no matter what you screwed up that day, as long as you learn from it, okay, I shouldn't set more than 9 goals or more than 5 goals on my to-do list for tomorrow. Like I could set 3 big goals and 3 little tasks or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear 3 a lot. And as far as like setting your daily objectives, like you can get more done, but like your primary things, I think Tim Ferriss is like, he only sets 2, and then I remember Darren Hardy, mentioned like one of his biggest mentors only sets 1, that he does one thing for the day. So if he wants to do something else, that's something he does on another day. But he literally focuses the entire day on one thing.
Right.
And so different strokes for different folks, but I can definitely say that doing too much in one day is a recipe for disaster or lack of mastery, at least.
Right. Yeah. And that, I think, is one thing that really musicians can relate to. If you've ever worked real hard on mastering an instrument, what do you have to do that? You focus. You do that one thing.
Yeah.
You deliberately practice that, like the 2-measure phrase of the solo that you're trying to master until that one little piece is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you move on. Because if you don't, that one little piece is never going to get perfect.
Right. No, you really need like this disproportionate amount of focus on it.
Yeah. And, when you, like how the guy has the one thing, and I think there's a book called The One Thing, right? Where it's, what's the one thing I can do that'll make everything in my life easier or irrelevant?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And so when you think of it like that, if I could only do one thing today, what would it be? Okay, then everything you do after that is extra credit and makes you feel even better.
Yeah. Yeah, if you set your expectations to something that would move the needle, but also is not so hard to achieve that you end up not achieving it, It's like aiming, if it's something that you need to push yourself into, like set your minimums really low. So you at least get started, like with writers, like setting, okay, I'm going to write just 1 sentence or something like that. But you end up writing more, just it's the whole process of sitting down and getting into it, But if you have this whole audacious 10,000 word goal for the day, that, it's going to be so overwhelming that you're going to like procrastinate to hell,
Yes.
So.
Yes. And I think, honestly, it seems like the theme of, most of what we're talking about today and most of the self-development and wanting to just be a better person comes down to just try shit, man.
Yeah.
Just try shit. If you're worried about all these, which tactic is going to work best, like throw it all out. Pick the first one you heard or the first one that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
Try it out.
Yeah.
Just do it. Because otherwise you'll end up like me where you're in perfection paralysis for so long you don't know which one to do. And then it's been a year since you actually went to the gym.
Right.
You know, like, oh God, what did I do?
Oh yeah, I mean, people
You
get
know?
perfection paralysis or analysis
Yeah.
paralysis. I have
Yeah.
friends who are, notoriously that way. It's just like
Hmm.
they'll spend way too much time thinking like, what's the absolute best, and they'll spend weeks. And if it's like a weight
Yeah.
loss program, dude, you could have been like pounds and pounds heavier. I sorry, leaner by this time. If you've just been doing anything, you
Yeah.
know. It's just like get on the road and then figure it out along the way.
Right.
And
Right. I
at
think
least
there is, what is it? In that book, The Success Principles. It's Jack Canfield. And
yep,
so there's a bunch of like hippie shit in there. If you guys are skeptical, that might not be the first book you reach for.
right.
But one thing he does talk about is fire, aim, ready.
Yeah,
It's just like, just shoot for the, like, in the general maybe area of the target.
right.
If you didn't hit it, adjust from there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, if I had known that, how much further would you be if you just took the action and got the feedback from that instead of sticking in the theory too long?
Some parts of life, some practices and things that we have to do, actually we get paralyzed very quickly by starting to analyze it. And one of those is social interactions, especially for people who are introverts, right? And this was a case for me. There was a time in my life where I was very introverted, and just to get myself to approach other people, notably approaching members of the opposite sex, right? And what I realized was that you cannot, like, every second that passes between you realizing you want to take an action, especially when it's like, oh, I see a cute girl, I want to approach her. It's like every second that passes doubles the amount of inertia and chance that you're going to make excuses and everything against it. You need to go act, right, fire, and then
Yeah.
calibrate when you're there. Just
Yeah.
open with hello and just figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you're going to psych yourself out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important. People need to take the first step. Going from 0 to 1 is a whole battle.
Oh yeah. And that comes, when we were talking about the mindset shifts.
Yeah.
You have to just take an action.
Yeah.
So, and at the risk of sounding misogynistic, but to use your example of talking to girls, right?
Sure.
So say you're playing a show and you're like, all I know is that I want to talk to girls tonight, right? There's more than one girl out there, unless you're in like a hardcore metal band, probably, right? Depending on which band you're in. But
I play progressive metal. There is no girls.
none. Okay. Step one: get in a country band. There's always girls. So, but there's obviously treat them with respect. We're not monsters. But
No.
if you talk to one and it doesn't work, you can say, wow, okay, for that instance, saying, hey, I think you're pretty, didn't work. Okay, try something else. Like, hey, what's your favorite drink?
Yeah.
Just try. Or you can use the same line for 6 different girls and see if one of them answers differently.
Yeah.
And that's just a metaphor for how to do anything. Like if you're, singing a song and people think that the way you sing it sucks, then you can try it differently next time.
Yeah. Just try. Just keep, adjusting.
Exactly.
Through action.
Yes. And I know a lot of guitarists can resonate with me on this story where I've spent how much time learning whatever Yngwie Malmsteen song, and I get to rehearsal with the full band on songs that are not Yngwie Malmsteen, and I cannot perform. All right? Because all I want to do is
Right.
like some like easier blues lick kind of thing. But it needs the attitude. It needs the rhythm to be in there solid. It needs the other components that practicing scales isn't going to give you. And I spent how much time in the just like with the metronome trying to play as fast as possible that I couldn't play eighth notes well.
Yeah.
I was stuck in that paralysis of, the perfection paralysis of that instead of thinking what actually matters.
Right.
If I had gone out and taken action and just gotten in a band right away and said, like, guys, I suck, but I'll figure it out. Like, that kind of attitude will get you so much farther and better a lot faster.
Billy Sheehan famously said that, if you want to like get good, you just got to play shows. Like he's played so many shows. He just started playing as soon as possible, and he's figured it out. He's learned bass practically on stage.
Yeah.
And one thing I've been doing, I've live streamed every day now for 6 days. Today would be day 7 when I get to it tonight. Like just jamming, just improvising. I've been
Yeah.
live streaming on Facebook, and also getting on Twitch, but it's going to take some time to kind of build up on there because it's a gaming platform. But
Okay.
anyway, but the whole idea is I just kind of force myself to just constantly do it and just figure it out and just constantly. That's like my playing shows, without
Yeah.
going out and playing shows, but like being out in the spotlight,
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get good at playing in front of people, play in front of people.
Yeah, over and over. And at the end of the day, one thing that I feel I missed for a long time and a lot of musicians are missing is the idea of why are we playing in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
If you're specifically playing to get better at like whatever fallopian minor scale, then if that's what you get out of it, that's what you get out of it. But if you want to be a career musician,
Mm-hmm.
you got to stop focusing on yourself so much and say, why am I here? I'm here because people love music.
Right.
And when I go play, if I want to have fans for my band, if I want people to show up and buy my merch or buy my album or buy drinks at the show, it's not about you, man. It's about them.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how like crazy shred you get unless that's what they are there for and that's what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a really major topic that's not talked enough in our industry about, because everyone just wants to know how to play their instrument better, which, yes, obviously super important. Get good at your craft, but keep in mind why you're doing it. Obviously it helps you grow yourself, but no one's going to pay you for that at the level that you deserve unless you're doing it for them.
Right.
And you've got to have a sense of purpose. And that, like, remember what I said earlier, like when I found that sense of fulfillment and purpose from coaching others and getting healthy,
mm-hmm.
it all sank in so much better. I was having so much trouble seeing how me being on stage yelling at people to get drunk, how is that going to fulfill me?
Right.
And now I see, they need this. And they keep telling me they need this. They need that weekend time to decompress from the week. And they come out and see me and their week melts away.
Right.
And when it's like that, it's like, dude, my bass lines are so much less complicated. I'm like, you need a whole note right now, don't you? Okay, I got this. Let's just feel the moment right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go because nobody cares about that. Unless they're another guitarist that are there that want to see you shred.
That's the minority though. Yeah.
Right. So don't play for them. Like, yeah, play like, hey man, I got this cool riff. Cool. Okay, let's get back to what matters.
Right. Right.
The people that are right up front that want to sing along with you, that just want to feel in that moment with you.
Right.
So.
Oh, that's important, man. That's important. We'll talk more on that. As far as like, because people overplay a lot, especially in rock metal kind of world, and focus on themselves, as you would say, and just try to, become these super shredders. And I'm totally guilty. I play.
I've been there. Yeah.
I play prog, and so like, dude, if I had to play pop or punk or something like that, I wouldn't have to practice another day in my life.
Yep.
But I mean, I love it. I choose music that challenges me, and that's. But at the end of the day, if I stand still on stage like stoic and play this stuff mechanically, it's not going to move people the way like if I was 85% as good, but actually putting on a show, and moving around and, engaging with people and just being with them, being there with them, making their experience, making it worth their $85 or whatever the hell they paid for the ticket, making it matter for them, like giving them that memory.
Yes.
Because that's what a show is for. If you're going to play just exactly like the album, they can just buy the album and listen to it in a beautiful sound system instead of through crappy speakers live. Like they come to see you, like play. And and the weird thing is like if you kind of flub here and there, they're rooting for you. They paid to see you, so they want you to do well.
Yeah.
And that's huge for people, for musicians' mindsets. It's like they think everyone's judging them. No, they paid to see you. They want you to do well. And if you do something like you kind of fall off, but then you fall back on, it's like a winning moment for them.
Right.
You know?
Every time. And
Yeah.
especially for beginning musicians, and it happens to pretty much everybody where suddenly like you screw up a song so bad you got to start over,
Right.
right?
Right. Oh
And
my
if
God.
your
I have
family,
a horrible story with that.
I've got a few as well.
Go on.
But if you've ever been there, or at least if you've seen that happen,
Hmm.
it's almost always friends and family that are there watching you too. And
Right.
immediately when you screw up so bad that you stop and you feel like crap and embarrassed, everybody just starts clapping and screaming for you, and they're so excited for you.
Right.
Because you're just doing it. You have
Right.
the courage to do what they're not doing,
You're on stage.
and yeah, you're automatically cooler than everybody, right?
You're literally on a pedestal.
Yeah, man. And it's like you said, creating that moment for people.
Right.
No matter how you played, it's how did you make them feel?
Right.
How did they really feel in that moment?
That's what's important.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super super important. So you've mentioned in your routine, like what your morning would look like. Do you have like an evening routine? Do you structure most of your day, or do you kind of like have like this block in the morning and block in the evening? How do you do your thing?
Yeah, I've found that especially with musician schedules, like we're so inconsistent because, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, you got to play, especially if you're in the bar scene, you're playing 9 to 1. And how many of these musicians also are working day jobs during the week? And so you have to be at work by 8 a.m., which means, your 5 days a week are totally different than your weekend, which is messing with your sleep and messing with all these different issues, which is messing with your willpower to make good food decisions, all this stuff, right?
Right,
So
right.
what it comes down to is you've got to have routines built in no matter what. So for me, it's crazy important to have a morning routine and a nighttime routine.
Right.
So which at the moment are very similar. So I do that same like brain dump, fear setting journaling for a minute just to make sure anything that's rattling around in there is out of my brain and on a piece of paper so I can fall asleep. I write down like some cool shit I did that day and then what I'm grateful for. And by the time I'm halfway through that second piece of that, like you'll see my journal just has like marks on it from me falling asleep and just like trying to get back on board
That's
to finish it. But just having that routine. And I've got, like you can do like hygiene and stuff, floss, brush the teeth. I use magnesium oil because it helps you sleep a little bit better. And
How so? Like, how do you use it?
I use a spray that you can, if you've got any injuries, especially if you're dealing with tendonitis or something, you toss some of that on there and it helps heal it up after a show a little bit better because your body needs some of those minerals for the healing process. Right. So that just kind of gets it right in there. And when it's transdermal, it absorbs better than a pill.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So that's been massively helpful. And it helps. Magnesium is in like every sleep supplement because it helps you chill down a little bit. So that's kind of 1-2 punch.
It's in my water.
Yeah. Yeah. Good minerals are wildly important.
Oh yeah,
Such
people. I think it's like I started drinking this quote unquote snake juice, right? Which is just sodium, magnesium, and what was the last one? Potassium. Sodium, potassium, magnesium. Basically, that's my regular water now. It's like I just add that in throughout because it just hydrates you better. It's a good thing. So
yeah.
What else do you supplement with, like on a general basis?
You saw my piles of cabinets of supplements and things.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of, and I've really tried to eliminate as much as possible lately. When I was getting into all this stuff, and I was into the, everything, all the biohacking, and like we talked about Ben Greenfield, and all these different people will say, well, this supplement, most people are deficient in this and that and this and that. The amount of worry that it caused me, and before every meal, like I had a time, like, okay, well, I want to take this one to make sure I don't get the blood sugar hit, and then this one for this effect, this one for the extra nutrients from this, because I don't think my meal is going to give me that. And then if I'm having spinach with my beef, it's going to block the iron absorption, so I got to make sure that I get some more later, and like all this, and like, okay, what did I do before this?
Right.
I didn't take it, and I felt fine. And the more that I've eliminated most of these things, the better I felt. Like
Wow.
we said,
Yeah.
but the body wants to take care of itself.
So what are the essentials then?
For me,
Mhm.
right now, magnesium oil. If I'm dealing with any gut issues, I've got Restore, which you can get in a nasal spray, or they've got like an actual liquid, and it just kind of helps seal up your gut lining so you absorb better. And there's these other effects when you heal your gut. So we don't need to dive into that because that'll take us another 2 hours. But so those two, apple cider vinegar
Right.
before a meal to curb the blood sugar hit, or if I'm just fasting and I want to turn that up a little more.
Before
Right now,
most meals or before certain meals?
before most meals,
Okay. Do you like
because
travel with it?
if I'm traveling, I use berberine instead. There's other supplements that do very similar things. Rock
Okay.
lotus extract. Berberine is my go-to right now because it was probably the cheapest one, and that just helps with that. It does very similar effect as far as blood sugar is concerned. So it'll shovel the glucose and glycogen into your muscles instead of into your bloodstream. So, oh, my computer's about to die.
Uh,
Un momento, por favor.
yes.
There we go.
All right.
Back on. Sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah, it's all good.
So, but as far as my actual, like, the core ones that I even take with me when I'm out on tours or anything like that, it's magnesium oil, berberine, and what else?
Do you keep a green powder in place or anything like that?
Yeah, sometimes I'll do a green powder. I've gone through different ones, and I've found a lot of the time I only use it on days where I know I'm not going to get a good amount of vegetables. Otherwise, I've found that it's just like my body feels overloaded with things. So, and I tend to eat a lot all the time.
Okay.
And actually, when I did all of my massive weight loss when we switched food, I was regularly eating 3,500 to 5,000 calories a day, but just of the real great food.
Right.
And I was just melting fat.
Yeah.
So, and that's been a habit of my whole life, is just eating stupid amounts of food. So it's manageable amounts now, definitely. You know, it's not like when I was in like taco competitions and, throwing down 30 tacos at a time and, 8 pounds of spaghetti per dinner. I was a monster. But
Yeah.
because of that, it's, if you are good at eating like 2 tiny meals, then the greens powder I think is helpful. But for me, I'm eating so much already, my body's going to get a lot of the nutrients it needs. So if I know that I've got like limited space, I'm going to be flying, then maybe I'll grab some greens powder
Right.
in packets. But
Sure. Yeah. Athletic greens has been like a good go-to for me.
yeah,
Yeah. It's convenient.
yeah. And there's a bunch of companies that do similar stuff. There's Amazing Grass. There's one I'm using right now. It's called Super Greens. Vitamineral Green is another one.
Yeah.
They all do a similar thing.
Yeah.
So if you've never tried any of them, just some are better than others. Dr. Ben Kim's greens powder is one of the more expensive but more effective ones. They're like it said before. It comes down to try something. Pick one, go for it. Do you feel better? Cool. No? Stop.
Right. Yeah. No, you got to listen to your body at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's an important thing, man. One area that we didn't discuss too much is relationships, right?
yeah.
We briefly discussed like with bandmates and stuff like that, but you have an awesome wife.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Your wife needs to teach my fiance how to cook.
yeah. Yeah. People always routinely ask us on multiple times a week, hey, can your wife cook for me? Hey, can your wife teach a cooking class? Hey, can your wife do and she's like, this is my fun thing. I cook for me and for Rusty, and that's it. I'm just like, yes.
That's awesome.
I hit a goddamn gold mine, dude.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely awesome. Like I see the kind of meals she makes, I'm like, oh man, that's like perfect. I wouldn't have to think about food anymore.
Right. Oh yeah. And especially, we spend, if as musicians, most of us are entrepreneurial because we have to be.
Yes.
There's so many different decisions we have to make every single day between our, what do I have to pack to get through the gig tonight? And okay, well, if I have to hit the session beforehand, well, and I'm driving all this far, you've got so many decisions to make. If you also have to make food decisions and you have to care for your relationships, something's not going to work.
Right.
Unless you have all these systems in place.
Oh yeah.
And so most of the time, my system for nutrition is my wife. Like, it's just outsourced. She makes sure that there's food a lot of the time.
And good food too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go grocery shopping together. That's one of our favorite hobbies because we're weird. Like, we just love going to grocery stores and reading ingredient labels. Like, oh, look at this one. Like this, they finally made a bar that we can eat. Like,
right.
That has like really the ingredients we need. So, outsourcing any decisions is awesome, or having a systems in place. So like I talked about the canned fish, that's just my system for if I need food and I'm not going to make a decision on it, you need decision power for your business and for your career.
Any particular canned fish? Just briefly on that.
Yeah, wild caught always, as much as possible at least. I mainly go with sardines. There's a couple different brands, but Costco has good deals on some of those, and we go to Costco once in a while. What is that? I don't remember the brand.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. But like
there's Wild Planet is one of them.
Oh yeah. That's the one I'm thinking of.
And then there's God, what's the other one? I don't know. The other one, they fit more fish in the can, so I started going with that one, and it's about the same price.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, either way, but sardines, canned salmon, and canned tuna are my go-tos. And wild caught Google it if y'all are curious.
Yeah, for sure.
So much behind that already. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, but almost every day I have a can of sardines.
So what's interesting about your routine, it's like, you play gigs very regularly and you avoid going out on long tours and things like that. And that's good because it kind of maintains more of a routine for you. It maintains your relationships. You don't deteriorate your relationships by going out for too long. And maybe that is a more efficient, and that's something that really works. Some bands, of course, some artists have to, tour for weeks and weeks on end. Especially like, if you're like a major band, flying around the world, and that's a different animal. But then if that's in place, then you have catering and you can have a rider, and to make sure you really get the foods that, that are important to you.
And whichever level you're at, even if you're in van tours with a $3 per day per diem, you can still make decisions for your health, as long as you're making sure that you're taking care of, keep that priority level. Is it take care of yourself, make sure you call your girlfriend, and make sure you're having conversations with your bandmates. If they're doing something stupid, you need to get that stuff out in the open and care for that relationship too. Yeah,
no, that's super important. There's Matthew Dillon Diana. This guy I interviewed, he's on that like van level, right? And he goes on these tours and he meal preps. He makes sure that he's in a place with a kitchen every so often.
I remember hearing that. Yeah.
And he bodybuilds, and so he maintains not just like health, but he maintains some solid muscle mass, and and so he makes it happen, and he has a meal prep company.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
It just goes to show another level of, every musician has to be entrepreneurial and resourceful.
Yeah. At
the end of the day, you've got to be resourceful with this stuff.
Yeah. I think the
music industry,
the entrepreneurial aspect is very important because, if you're going to be successful, you really can't put it in anyone else's hands. You have to take control of it. And today there's so much opportunity and so much ways to make that happen, and so much flexibility in how you can get paid from so many different sources, that you just really have to systematically figure out, okay, where should I put my attention on? Maybe I should be like I'm doing right now. I'm trying to build up the streaming thing, build up followers like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's different ways of building an audience, but building an audience, that's a big thing, because with an audience, no matter what you're doing, that's income right there. Because Like people think, oh, these YouTubers, they're earning so much, and they're thinking about the revenue from YouTube ads. I'm like,
Hmm.
somebody who's earning like 2-3 grand a month from YouTube ads, that's a tiny portion of the income they're making because of how much access they have to these fans, that they release a $10 product,
Hmm.
and even if like 1 to 3% of their audience buys this product, it's going to make way more than their little ad revenue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just because people have buy-in, they trust you and everything, and you can really create a product that's adds value to your audience. And so I think musicians, and I've said this before, musicians are fundamentally entrepreneurial, just by temperament,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so we got to exploit that. And the only thing that we kind of struggle with is um, conscientiousness, right?
Hmm.
Being responsible, and that comes down to what you said before, like really having having goals and having a vision for yourself, and knowing what your values are, and putting loving yourself enough, and your idea of what you can create in a world enough to be married to that idea, that
Hmm.
you take your career seriously, and
Yeah.
you do what has to be done, right?
Right. And I mean, if especially, the people that are up and coming that are 18, 19, 20, starting their first tours, they don't generally have that mindset.
No.
It's the first time that there's like girls and booze everywhere,
Right.
like, and it takes time to make mistakes and figure out what's actually going to work for you, and try and not make too big of a mistake that'll, screw up your long-term trajectory.
Right. And that's why I love doing this show, because like I have people on that have been through all that, and then have come kind of slowed down with the drinking and all of those kinds
Hmm.
of habits, and have built up habits that help sustain their careers.
Hmm.
And if they could have applied those habits a decade or two earlier, they would have. And so
Yeah.
hopefully this stands to give people early in the game a little bit of a head start in doing those things.
Yeah.
Dude, you've shared a lot of awesome things today. We need to have another conversation. I need to come over there. We need to hit the
Yeah.
cold plunge, and we need to do all those things.
Yeah. We can even hit the ocean, because that normally gets down to cold enough to make it like cryotherapy levels.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. The ocean's deep out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Dude, it's been awesome. It's been awesome. And yeah, I'll be seeing you again soon for sure.
Yeah.
I'll come out to LA, and we'll hang out.
Please do.
Yes. So, if you had only one thing you can share with all musicians, what would it be?
Honestly, every time I try and think of something new and different sometimes, and it always comes back to the same, like, be grateful.
Be grateful.
Practice being grateful. If you're having a hard time, just write one thing that you're grateful for, because it'll retrain the wiring in your brain to start seeing more things to be grateful for. You start seeing more things that are good in the world, which makes you suddenly see more things that you're doing good. And then suddenly you want to do more things for yourself, which
Yes.
will turn the tide on your health, your relationships, your energy, your career, every single thing. If you can just take that one mental shift of what is one thing I'm grateful for today, and you do that every single day, the downstream effects are unbelievable. I'd love to say it's, you need more spinach or something, but it comes down to just really connecting with that level of gratitude and appreciation for things.
I agree. I agree.
So,
That starts the whole trajectory. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Rusty Osborne, where can people find you?
absolutely. Primarily, I'm on Instagram right now at the Coach Rusty, where I help musicians lose weight and feel great forever. So
Yes.
we focus on permanent weight loss and permanent, making sure that you've got your energy and your mindset always there, so you can have all the vitality you ever need to really have a thriving career and lifelong health. So, or you can always email me at thecoachrusty@gmail. Google me, whatever. I'm out and around. If you're ever in Orange County, come see the band Redneck Rodeo.
Yes.
And yeah,
Awesome. 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 All right, guys. Till next time, Coach Rusty here. See you guys soon.